right, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report. The town hall session begins right now. It's our continued coverage of the CBC. We are calling it the CBC Blackboard. Last week, we spoke about the transition, how would that look like. This week, we are talking about the next chapter. Why? Because the task force is supposed to give its preliminary report on Friday. But, most important, what are your recommendations as a parent, as a learner, as a teacher? That's the opportunity we are giving our audience tonight to be the ones to lead this conversation and give their own reviews. We have parents here, we have teachers, we have curriculum experts who will also be talking to us about this. But let me start by introducing my guests in the panel real quick, beginning from my immediate left. Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa is here, Executive Director, Usawa Agenda. Thank you so much for making time. Dr. John Mugo is also here, Executive Director, Zizi Afrique. Thank you so much for making time. Both of them experts in education and curriculum development matters as well. But let's start off from the audience, who are comprised of parents, teachers, and curriculum experts as well, to find out what their concerns are. And I'll start right here. Start with your name and then tell us your concern with CBC and your recommendation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Trevor. My name is Christina Marangu. I'm currently the chair, Kindergarten in Action Subcommittee of the Kenya Private Schools Association. And I'm a teacher trainer at Amica School Teacher Training College, which is an ECD or early years teacher training college. So we see CBC subscribes for equal opportunity for every child. And this, you can see, it is embedded in its guiding principles. And I'll talk about two of those principles, one being inclusive education and the other being parental engagement. Through the competencies in CBC, strengths are recognized and nurtured. And as per the vision and mission, we see no child should be left behind. And this can only be done if the teacher can envision this. For me, I think the teacher is the leader in implementing this curriculum and in ensuring that this curriculum is inclusive, or their classrooms are inclusive. We see the subjects in the CBC, there are so many that are very practical. We have art and crafts, music, psychomotor skills. Now, how can we ensure that this teacher is well prepared to deliver this curriculum and to make sure that every child is included and no child is left behind? So my solution is I don't see so many of the things in CBC or the competencies in CBC as new things. I think they're things that have been there and probably were left out when we concentrated more on knowledge-based education. And the teachers in their training also concentrated more on knowledge-based education. These ideas are very old because they can be found in Montessori education. Yeah. They can be found in education that is based on Frobo, who is the father of kindergarten. And he really emphasized on practical learning, inclusive education, differentiation, because he said all children are different. Yeah, you can't expect all children to be the same. Okay. Now we find that there are some colleges, let's say private colleges, that really practice this practical kind of teacher training, especially in the early years. Yeah. The government has been generous enough to include us in their training right from 2017. My recommendation is there a way now we can work together, we as private colleges with government, just as they were gracious enough to work with us, so that we can learn from each other. Okay. Yes, thank you very much.
The microphone is back there. You can pass the microphone. Yes. State your name and you can use whichever language you want. Yes. Wametoka wapi? Ongeza sauti kidogo. Ongeza sauti kidogo. Samahani kidogo, wacha nikusaidie na hii kipaza sauti kingine, ni kama hiyo yako iko na shida kidogo. Pass the microphone back there please. Anza tena tafadhali.
Okay.
Pole.
Kwa majina ni Anne Wangui Karioke.
Okay.
Mimi ni mfanyabiashara hapa town CBD. Na swali langu ni hii CBC si mbaya, lakini imetuhusisha sana kama wazazi. Kama mimi utoka kazi ninaingia kwa nyumba kitu 7:30, unapata msichana anataka ku-download, na wakati anataka ku-download unapata cyber mingi zimefungwa. So unapata pia mtoto anaenda asubuhi bila hiyo kumaliza homework. Na pia unajiuliza kuna mzazi yako pale Turkana, hakuna mahali atakibia cyber, na ilihali wanafaa watoto wote wapewe platform moja, yule mtoto wako urban na yule mtoto wako rural. So unapata kuna gap ya wale watoto wako nyumbani, mashabani na wale watoto wako town. Jambo lingine pia sisi kama wazazi, unapata kama sisi juzi tunaitishwa pesa ya kuku. Kila mtoto anatakikana kuku shule. Wale wa grade 6, kuku ama rabbit ama sungura.
Kuku ama sungura.
Kila mzazi, kila mtoto. So unapata hawa watoto kama wako watoto 500 kwa hiyo shule, kuna kuku 500. Alafu pia pale mahali pa kuweka hizo kuku space hakuna. So zinaenda zinafinyana hapo, mingi zinakufa. So unajiuliza kwa nini tulikibia na hatukuweka mikakati ile inafaa. So kwangu mimi ningeomba ya kwamba kwanza serikali iweke mikakati ile inafaa, kwa sababu CBC si baya. In fact imepatiana nafasi kwa watoto wote, wale waelevu kwa masomo na wale pia wanajua vitu za mikono. But implementation ilifanywa kwa haraka, na kwa hivyo tunapata wale watoto wako grade 6, wale wako grade 5 na grade 4. Wengi wao hapo katikati kuna wale wanakaa watapotea.
Okay.
And also another concern yangu ni tuna watoto wengi sana ambao wanafanya mitihani. Kama sahi my daughter ni grade 6, wanafanya mitihani. Ili hali mimi hata sahi sijui mtoto wangu anaenda wapi. Kutoka hapo sijui. Juu tumeambiwa kuna junior secondary. Na kuna key study tulifanya pale Mathare constituency. Tukapata tuko na over 30 primary schools. But and yet we have only 3 junior secondary school. So tunajiuliza watoto wengine wote wataenda wapi?
Okay.
Yes, asante.
Thank you so much. Let's start with those two issues first of all, then I'll come back and get the views. If there's more microphones coming through, I'd like to hear from a CBC parent as well over here, if that is your concern. And Dr. Manyasa, I'll start with you. Let's talk about what Anna's raised, then we get to Christabel's issue. And she's raised two fundamental issues. She's working late when she goes home. She needs to go to the cybers are closed. She has a grade 6 pupil. And a fundamental question ni, atenda wapi?
Thank you. I would like to start with the last question. Where will the grade 6 go? They will go to junior secondary. I think that needs to be clear in the minds of Kenyans. Now where the junior secondary will be, in my view, it will be in most of our sub-county secondary schools because they are close home so that these children can commute from home. There are private schools that have been allowed to develop secondary streams because they have capacity. They will host some of the children in their schools as junior secondary. The discussion that we are having right now is to suggest that we don't take these children to secondary schools that are far away from home, because most of them are still very young. They need to be close home. They need to be best in a day school where they study from home. But it will be important that we understand that they are moving to junior secondary. They will not be in primary anymore. And this is one question I've been asked, why do we have to go to junior secondary? There was logic in deciding that there should be junior secondary at age 12. Because there was research that was showing a lot of children were dropping out of school at that age, 12, 13, When in some of our communities, boys go through circumcision, they think they have become men, they don't want to continue being in primary school. So there was logic to put a transition at that age. Now, the challenge that has been there, and it goes back to what Madam Wangoya has mentioned, is that we slightly rushed in implementation and failed to plan adequately for what will happen. However, because we are already in this swimming pool, you know, if someone found you basking near a swimming pool and pushed you into water in your suit, you don't ask whether you can swim, you have to swim. So we are in those circumstances and we will have to swim. These children will go to secondary school, will go to junior secondary, mostly in our secondary schools, but some of them in our primary school that have capacity.
I seem to be having a bit of a challenge with your microphone. I'm coming back there in just a bit, but let me hear what Dr. Mugu has to say about what Christabel raised, and you can also start with what Wangoi mentioned as well, because Dr. Manyasa is suggesting something interesting, the sub-county schools to be used as a junior secondary school. What is your suggestion?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Christabel said that there is nothing new, which is true. I mean, in CBC, what children are learning is fundamentally not new. What is new, and a lot new, is how learning has changed and how people now acquire knowledge. When Dr. Manyasa and I were in primary school, the teacher was the sole custodian of knowledge. He or she would come and dish out rations, and all knowledge was contained in the textbook. Now, we learn from any place we are in. Textbooks are still relevant, but we learn more, much more faster than that. So the way learning happens now, the teacher can no longer be the center of the learning experience. And so the training of teachers is very key, and we agree when the teacher is not properly prepared, and the problem that Wangoi is raising is because that teacher is not well prepared. So when the teacher is not ready, the burden goes to the parents, because there is no way a teacher can come with demands of a project at night that are expected in the morning. That is not a teacher who is prepared. That teacher, for sure, has no clue what they are supposed to be doing, because projects are not done overnight. A project carries many pieces of learning experiences and is supposed to be delivered over time. And when the parent is not aware about what is happening at school and that collaboration is not there, then the learning also doesn't happen. So we have a CBC that is ideal. We think CBC is happening, but essentially, actually, it's not happening. So parental empowerment and engagement is a key principle for learning, just like value-based education. These are things that now, when you look at where we are as a society, are needed. That point of the transition to junior secondary, the junior secondary is needed. And the main reason why junior secondary is important is because we cannot now be having 8 years of learning the basics. When you look at other countries, like now Germany, for instance, transition happens at grade 4. So 8 years for a primary school is too long to start with, besides now the onset of the age called adolescence, which now determines the next movement and how learning also and schooling has to change. So the junior secondary is important. I think where it will be, for me, it doesn't matter so much, because the objective of junior secondary is parents, mzazi, na mwalimu, and the child, the three of them, to be in close contact so that they identify the talent of that learner, and they are able to prepare for what specialization they will go to when they go to senior secondary. So the nearness of that child to home is important, because if a child leaves Mandera to come to Alliance or to Mangu, that consultation will not happen. And so the junior secondary objective cannot be met, and the competencies that are needed at that level will not be met. So it is important that junior secondary be as near to home as possible, so that that objective can be met.
Okay. Dr. Manyasa, let me come back to you addressing Anne Wangoi's issue, especially in terms of the grade 6, tutaenda wapi. So will they be communicated to at some point? What happens?
It is actually my expectation that when the task force presents its report to the president on CBC, which they are going to do early December actually, to make sure that the government can prepare for what happens to grade 6, that they will recommend that these children go to schools near home. That is critical, and I think that will happen. Okay. Just to emphasize the issue of there is nothing new around CBC, what has changed is the focus of learning. Unlike in the outcome-based curriculum that we have been implementing, where you set the outcomes and you try to get every child to that outcome, and a child who fails to reach that outcome is branded failure. Under the competency-based, we have the outcomes, but we are saying we will evaluate every child's capacity and pathway to those outcomes. We are not going to say this one has passed, this one has failed. That is the change. And that is one thing that I hope we can be able to clarify in the minds of a lot of Kenyans who keep saying CBC and 844. CBC is a curriculum, 844 is a system. They are not comparable. What is comparable is CBC and the outcome-based curriculum that we have currently been implementing. We could also still implement CBC in 844 as a system. So I think that needs to be clear. The issue of teachers and their demands, it is pure lack of preparation. I agree totally with John. It is pure lack of preparation. But that is a short-term problem. I think that will be sorted with time.
All right. I'd like to pass the microphone to Jemima back there because there's something that Wangoi raised. Jemima is back there. She's a CBC teacher. Wangoi said munaitisha Cuckoo na sungura karibu 500 zote zinaingia at the same time. What is the thinking behind that? And also as a teacher, something that Christabel also raised, what would you recommend in terms of teacher preparedness? Because you're handling this one-on-one. What would you want to be seen? Start by answering Wangoi on why some teachers are asking for Cuckoo, for example, and Sungura.
Trevor, I'm Jemima, a CBC teacher and a trainer. As far as the requisitions of the animals, the rabbits and the chickens are concerned, as teachers, I would recommend that we work in group work. Group work is very effective. You can have a group of 20 learners, and at least for you to achieve the objective, you work as a group and have at least 2 chicken. Not necessary that you must have a chicken for each child or a rabbit for each child. In that way, through group work in communication and collaboration, the learner will be able to achieve an objective that was targeted individually, the same as the ones as you had planned individually.
Okay. So the working in group perspective works properly, like you're saying, but isn't that the prerogative of the teacher? Because, you know, learners have a way of feeling left out. If they were told to bring chicken, each and every one of them wants to bring a chicken. Isn't it the prerogative of the teacher to say, first, this class, we are dividing you into groups. Group number 1, 2, 3 will consist and so and so and so and so. You will bring the chicken, you will bring the sungura. So that the other 2 don't feel like they're the only ones who didn't come with chicken. Then you end up with 500 chicken in the school.
No, with the designs, the KICD designs, we are giving guidelines and the teacher's guides on how you are supposed to do it once at a time. So if you are, like the other previous grade 6 KEPSE assignment, the projects, you are supposed to choose between the pigs, chicken or a rabbit. So it is upon you with the class. You teach the learners the value, communication and collaboration, problem-solving skills, you come up together, and at the end of the day, you agree with the learners and come up with a solution. After you involve the learners, the decision that you are going to make, it will be a friendly decision. I, the teacher, the learner, and the parent will be very comfortable when they are all engaged.
Okay. Hold that microphone for a bit. Dr. Manyasa, is that a misunderstanding between the teachers and the parents? Because from Wangoi's perspective, they give each learner chicken or a sungura.
Yeah, that will mean there is miscommunication. But also, to some extent, I have felt that there was a section of teachers that had not bought into the CBC idea. And I don't blame them because the training was rushed. And then there was all this public discourse around we will abolish CBC, it is not going to be there. So even those who were taken to training, they didn't take the training seriously because they didn't believe CBC was going to be there. And that is something that is very common with our society as Kenyans. That even when things are happening in a certain way, we keep believing they won't be happening. So for that reason, there was inadequate understanding of the curriculum and the interpretation of the curriculum, which is causing the problems we see, like children being told to print things in the evening that they need to bring by morning. A lot of things to do with how do the teachers interpret the curriculum and translate it into lessons that they are supposed to be having with their learners.
Dr. Mugo, how should this be addressed ideally? Should this course be passed back to the school so that if there's need for having chicken, they should be reared in school? If there's need for having rabbit, they should be there in school and not ask parents to supply?
First of all, I think what Jemima has talked about is a competence. Now, one of the main things of CBC are what we call core competencies, and there are 7 of them. And what she has talked about, communication and collaboration, is one of them. And she has spoken also about problem solving. Now, what teachers are, I think, are unable to get, and again we come back to the preparation of the teacher, is that the curriculum can put rabbit or chicken, but we know that it's not everywhere in Kenya you'll have these 2 animals. Just the same way we were seeing a swimming pool. You know, not everywhere in this Kenya there is water. So what a teacher is supposed to do is to contextualize, to understand what competence am I developing by this thing. It's not about the chicken. It's about the competence you are developing. And that competence could be developed by something else that is available in that context. It doesn't have to be chicken and rabbit. But I think because we are used to the cramming stuff, so what you see there written is what you rush to do. And so the question is, how do we now prepare the new teacher who is able to have problem-solving skills themselves? Because again, as teachers cannot give what they don't have. So these 7 core competencies, how will we ensure that teachers have them first? Because unless if teachers have them, then we don't expect, it's unreasonable to expect that they'll be able to facilitate learners to have them.
Yeah. Jemima, was the training adequate, and what do you recommend going forward?
According to my experience, there is lack of information, communication, and ICT skills. When you look at digital literacy, this has raised a concern that the learner will be sent to the cyber to print. It is not necessary that you are supposed to print. If I've been taught to print mother and father, that is grade 1, for example, as a teacher, I will encourage that child. It is not a must for you to go to the cyber. Through creativity and imagination, you can draw father and mother, color, and achieve the same objective as the one who, and in that way, you are bringing out the competencies so well, and you are able to know the talent of this child and the skill through practical. So it is us teachers, parents, to guide these learners on how to come up with solutions. I had a concern like the other day, the learners in the curriculum, in the PE, the learners are supposed to have the swimming skills. We do not have swimming pools everywhere. We have the theory and the practical. So I would advise that when you are giving out the practicals in our PE, we give out practicals that accommodate all the learners. The learners in Turkana maybe do not have swimming pools, but in Nairobi, not all schools can afford swimming schools in their school ground. So there's a challenge in the PE. Then in the digital literacy, our teachers are not well equipped with the ICT skills. So we need regular trainings. We need more practical skills, beginning with us teachers, so that we may be able to be effective to the parents. Then I had also a concern. We have the IEP in the new system. It is very flexible. The individualized education program. Where are these learners? The other regular learners are transiting to junior secondary. I understand in the NEC website we have the foundation level, we have the intermediate level. I doubt whether our teachers are well prepared for these learners in these different levels, and I will kindly advise, request for clarification on that. Then on the assessments, right now we have the KPSEA, grade 6. All along since grade 2, around 2019, learners have been doing assessments without choices. Then just last term, we are here prepared for the KPSEA. The learning areas, around 11 learning areas, 10 learning areas have been merged. We have the integrated science, where in the integrated science, it is one paper with around 5 learning areas. Now, they are doing that paper at the same time. How will this learner go and revise 5 learning areas? Then how will it be effective as much as it is summative assessment which contributes to less % with the formative assessment? So I would appreciate if that one is well clarified, the individualized learners too, then I'll be, yeah.
Many questions, but Dr. Manyasa will speak one of them. Pass the microphone to Kimathi here at the front. Wilson Kimathi is a CBC parent. I'd like to hear how you're dealing with these challenges. Then I'll open the floor. If you just have a question or comment, raise your hand and I'll make sure the microphone comes to you. But Dr. Manyasa, go first for Jemima. She's raised quite a number of issues. Individualized education program, that is the IEP, the issue of assessment without choices, now it's coming up again, and the integrated subjects that they have.
I think that Kenyans and Kenya is hung on to the issue of exam. My own opinion is that these children should not sit any exam exiting from primary. Because we stumbled onto this exam without a clear plan on how, if you recall the speech that the president made at KICD when launching this curriculum, he said there will be no exams in primary. There was not supposed to be exam. Along the way, an exam was conceived. And because it is being conceived along the way, there's no clear plan on how that exam will look like. If you have a paper that has 5 learning areas, which is true, how much of each learning area will be assessed in that paper for it to make sense? So in my view, we shouldn't be talking about a grade 6 exam. Children should be transiting to junior secondary. After they develop their competencies in the areas of interest, we will assess for purposes of placing them in the different streams at the end of grade 9. I don't know the purpose of this CAPC exam that we're going to have. Suggestions have come, and I'm hoping the task force will capture that we don't have this exam. It has simply created confusion. A lot of people are asking the question that the teacher is asking, because these learners have learned. They have been assessed continuously without multiple choice. They have been told suddenly, now there is multiple choice here, you need to be able to respond to exams in multiple choice. I think that is something negative. Is something that I'm hoping won't be there. If it is there, NEC will figure out how to make sure that they balance a paper that has 5 learning areas and that each area is significantly assessed. But I think it will be problematic. About the individualized learning, again, we are in the teething problems region when everyone is still trying to figure out how well do we make that work. It is something that is necessary. We haven't had sufficient numbers of teachers prepared to deliver that. So it is facing challenges, but it is necessary that we do it. And I think that there will be time to build up that resource to make sure it happens the way it should.
All right. Dr. Mugo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we have 2 kinds of assessments. One is called the norm referenced assessment, and that's what KCPE is. And the other is called a criterion reference. Now, the difference is that in one, learners compete with each other, and in the other, the learner competes against the curriculum standard that is set. So I think we have a lot of hangover from examinations. And where this 40% exam came from, I can suspect, I think it is 2 things. One was the mistrust on the teacher. How will we be sure that their teachers are giving them the right marks? And a lot of this pressure is coming from parents, because parents are used to hearing that their child is number one, or umekuwa namba ngapi. And yet when you look at life, I mean, in how many circumstances do we compete with each other that uko number one, uko number this? So the world is changing, and I think we need to let parents know that that kind of competition is not what we need, because it actually works against learning. If you look at data, for instance, 73% of all high-stake examinations in the world are on the African continent. And when you look at where children learn and they don't learn, it is on the same African continent where learning outcomes are lowest globally. So, which means that actually examinations don't help learning. They actually work against learning. Now, what we needed at grade 6 was this assessment that tells us whether the learners that are moving from now this level to the other level have met the curriculum standard, and feedback to the teachers and the system on how we need to improve the learning of children and what areas need to be improved. So science, for instance, we used to have what was called general science. And so when you look at the principles of science at the elementary level, which is primary school, you actually don't need to differentiate physics from biology, because it's all about science and matter and how all these relate. So we must not, and then the second reason why this 40% came was when we have a child in Turkana or in Makueni, how will we determine who goes to Kenya High and who goes to the other school? And yet for grade 6 it's not necessary. Those things will come when we are going to senior secondary. I think they can come because now we'll have schools specializing in certain channels, and we'll need to see who goes where. But the competition at grade 6 was actually uncalled for, and I think I think would be my recommendation, to scrap that 40%. Let us have an assessment that is criterion reference at that level. The IEP, the Individualized Education Program, is a challenge when the classes are big. If a teacher has 40 learners, then IEP implementation is very complex. So we'll need to look at learner assessment to see like the prevalence of those that are not able to cope up, and see how the IEP can work. In what circumstances do we need to adapt it? In what circumstances can it work the way it is designed? So that, I think, is very important if we are to nurture every learner's potential.
All right. I'll take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll still continue this discussion. I see quite a lot of feedback coming through at Trevor Media, at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. How many more people have comments or questions? Just a show of hands. All right. When we come back to the floor. Right. See you in a bit.